Today's episode is brought to you by ice.com. Please visit ice.com/gems to get 25% off site-wide. Welcome to the Genealogy Gems podcast, providing quick and innovative ways to make the absolute most out of your research time and creative ideas for sharing and displaying your family history. I'm your host, Lisa Louise Cook. Hello and welcome to episode number 109 of the Genealogy Gems podcast. We've kind of been under construction around here at Genealogy Gems. I had just one little row of track lighting in my office, which kind of made this a bit of a genealogy cave. But now the dust has settled and we've had the old popcorn ceilings scraped away and lovely new recessed lighting installed, and voila, I can see more than just my microphone in front of me, which is terrific. Although I can also see all the dust bunnies in the corners, so I've got some work to do. But who's got time for cleaning when you've got genealogy to do? And that's what we're going to do here on today's podcast. So let's talk about the latest genealogy news. Over at FamilySearch, with their most recent additions to the website, they are now up to, get this, 600 free original source record collections online from all over the world. This week, they are adding some new international records from Argentina, Brazil, Canada, Colombia, France, Italy, Poland, and Spain. And new additions were made to their U.S. collection as well. They've added records for California, District of Columbia, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Mississippi, New York, Pennsylvania, and Texas. Oh, and also Washington State, Wisconsin, and the Virgin Islands. And of course, you will find all that genealogy goodness over at FamilySearch.org. And this next item I've got for you is very cool. The Southern California Genealogical Society, with the help of Ancestry.com, continues to pave the way into the future with their brand new interactive smartphone app for the Genealogy Jamboree Conference, which of course is taking place June 10th and 11th this year in 2011 in Burbank, California. The app is free and it lets you do all kinds of stuff relating to one of the most popular genealogy conferences out there. Stuff like you can connect with your friends and share the app with other people. You can go over the different lecture sessions and add them to your personal calendar kind of ahead of time to prep for the conference. You can learn about, of course, the speakers by reading their pages and their bios and contact information. Search for exhibitors and find them on the trade show floor map so that you know exactly where you're headed to. You can download the exhibitor brochure, syllabus articles, other documents. You can receive updates about both scheduled or informal or kind of unconference activities. You can share your photos and you can see photos that other people are sharing. And of course, you can find Burbank and Los Angeles services and destination spots for your visit while you're there. And you can also refer to the venue map. You know, it's a big location there that they have the conference, and you can find exactly where the meeting rooms are and where the different hotel services are located. So this is going to be pretty fun, and it's going to be so helpful, particularly if you're a first-timer headed to the Jamboree. You can do a lot of prep ahead of time, and you will be armed with all the information that you need when you get there. So this new Jamboree app, you got a couple different ones to choose from. They've got one for the iPhone, iPod Touch, and the iPad, and you can get that app from the iTunes App Store by just searching Genealogy or Jamboree. And for all other phones like the Android and BlackBerry, just point your mobile browser to m.core-apps.com/SCGS2011. And if you don't have a smartphone, but you'd like to check out the app anyway, I will have a link in the show notes for you for this episode number 109, which will take you to a little demo where you can kind of take a look and see what they're up to over there. Pretty high tech. And real quick, speaking of apps, I want to let you know that the Genealogy Gems podcast app for Android is now available in the Amazon App Store. So that's just one more way that you can snag the app, which lets you listen to the show in the background, or you can stream it live, and gives you access to exclusive bonus content. So pretty cool stuff there for app users. And the folks at Jamboree didn't just sit on their laurels after launching the app. They have also been busily putting on free webinars as part of their Jamboree extension series. These are really a great way to not only preview what's going to be coming up at Jamboree, but also to get to participate in some of the great presentations that do happen there at the live Jamboree, even if you can't make it there in person this year. I just got done presenting Getting the Scoop on Your Living Relatives from Old Newspapers in 2011. And wow, we had a huge turnout, really great. Over 800 folks registered for the webinar, and it was just a ton of fun. And there are more free webinars coming up. You can get the complete list at their website at scgsgenealogy.com, and I'll have the complete URL address for you in the show notes. And I am really looking forward to one that I saw on the schedule. It's called Getting Your Notes and Sources Right in Your Genealogy Software. This one's being presented by my friend Janet Hovorka of Generation Maps. And this topic is so important to the quality of our research. You know, we all know that citing sources is not usually the most exciting part of doing our family history. And in fact, you know, some folks never actually get around to it, and that really comes back to bite them down the road. And as we all know, with everyone out there online sharing their family trees, which of course is a great way to get connected and to find more clues, it really is all the more important to accurately cite your sources. When you create good source citations, you aren't just improving your family tree, but you really are helping the entire genealogy community. So Janet is going to take a look at doing source citations in all the major programs: Roots Magic, Legacy, Family Tree Maker, and Ancestral Quest. And you're just going to love Janet. She has been a guest here on the show, and she really knows her stuff. She and her husband, Kim, they own Generation Maps at generationmaps.com, which is a genealogy chart printing service, and she writes the Chart Chick blog at chartchick.com. So you'll definitely want to tune into that one. And of course, if you enjoy her webinar, you're going to want to check out Janet's classes at Jamboree. She's going to be making 3 live presentations at the conference in June, and we'll also be there in the exhibit hall with Generation Maps, available for printing charts on the exhibit floor. So be sure and bring your pedigree charts on a flash drive to the conference, and you can see some of the beautiful work that they do there. So her webinar coming up, it's on Saturday, May 7th, about a week from now when I'm publishing this episode. It's 90 minutes long. And here are the times. Okay, it depends on your time zone. If you're on the Pacific Coast, you're going to want to tune in at 10 a.m. And of course, that's 11 a.m. Mountain and 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. So it's a live presentation, but if you're on the West Coast, tune in at 10 a.m. If you're on the East Coast, you're looking at 1 o'clock p.m. And space is limited, so be sure and reserve your space for that free webinar coming up. You can go to www.gotomeeting.com/register/883017464, and I will have that for you in the show notes. And of course, speaking of free webinars, Roots Magic, the wonderful sponsor of this podcast, is also doing a series of free genealogy webinars lately. And up to now, they've kind of been focused on providing really great content, but it's been focused on using Roots Magic. And so I was surprised and very honored when they invited me to do a couple of presentations in addition to the Roots Magic presentations they've been doing. So this last week, I did Google search tips and tricks. Had a really fun time. Congratulations to Gail Johnson. She won a copy of the book. We also gave away a free 1-year Genealogy Gems premium membership, and just had a great time talking about, of course, lots of tips that come from my new book, which is The Genealogist's Google Toolbox. And we were talking about search techniques and applying the different search strategies to, of course, the wide range of different tools that are out there available at Google. So that was a lot of fun. And if you'd like more info on the book, it's at googleforgenealogy.com, but you can watch that webinar for free. It's over at the Roots Magic website. Just go to rootsmagic.com, and on the tabs across the top, you just click Learning and then select Webinars. And you need to kind of scroll down to the bottom because they are in date order. So it was the last one that was done. It's the last one there on the bottom of the page. At least currently it's on the bottom of the page. But you can watch it there, right there for free. The full, I think it runs about 80 minutes, the full webinar presentation that we did. And hopefully that will kind of jumpstart and rev up your Google search. We had a lot of fun with that. And coming up, I'm going to do another one in May of 2011. Again, it's free. It's going to be an introduction to Google Earth for genealogy. And so that one, again, you can register for right there from the webinars page at rootsmagic.com. And I'll have a link that will take you directly there. But I think we actually maxed out the capacity for the Google Search Tips and Tricks webinar. We had about 1,100 people registered. And technically, not everybody comes to the actual live event, but I think the space capacity in a webinar is about 1,000. So they always take a few extra because not everybody necessarily comes to the live event. But to get your spot to attend that live event, you're going to want to register right away because these, I've just been thrilled, have been really popular. And so we're going to have a lot of fun. That's coming up in May. In fact, I need to have the exact date for you here. Let me look. And that's coming up on Tuesday, May 24th. And it's going to start at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific. And of course, that would be 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. So that's early evening on the West Coast and mid-evening on the East Coast. 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific on Tuesday, the 24th. That's the Google Earth for Genealogy webinar. So I hope to see lots of you guys there. And finally, I just want to share a bit of family history feel-good news that comes from the Daily Mail's Mail Online website. That's out of the UK. I want to share this article with you. It's called Home After 94 Years, A Fallen Hero's Bible Lost in the Hell of the First World War. It's by an unnamed Daily Mail reporter, and it was published on April 13th of 2011. I just thought this was a really neat story, and I will have a link to the article, to the complete article in the show notes. It's well worth going to because the article includes some great pictures that really help tell this story. But I want to read a little bit of this to you because it really is just inspiring. It says here, it was a soldier's talesman lost along with thousands of lives in the bloody chaos of a First World War battlefield. Now 94 years on, in a remarkable tale of human resourcefulness, the treasured Bible of a fallen hero has found its way back to his family. Private Richard Cook dropped the book as he came under heavy fire during the battle in Belgium in June 1917. It lay buried for several months before being found by Private Herbert Hodgson, who credited it with saving his life and kept it until his own death many years later. Only moments after laying his hand on it, Private Hodgson was knocked unconscious by a shell, but survived, and credited the Bible for his luck. The late serviceman often wondered which poor bugger the tome had once belonged to. Now, one of his 3 sons has flown 12,000 miles to New Zealand to hand it over to its rightful owners, and they finally traced it back to Private Cook. Now, at this point in the article, they go on to talk about how they went about tracking down the Bible's original owner. This is really neat. It says, Private Hodgson's relatives and a researcher who published his memoirs used a service number, 34816, scribbled on the side of it to discover the identity of Private Cook, who was fatally shot in October 1917, aged 26. Then they matched the writing on the book with an example of Private Cook's handwriting in his letters home to confirm it. The precious Bible had been donated to the National Army Museum on New Zealand's North Island during a moving ceremony. Major Alistair McCall, Private Cook's great-nephew, said, "This means a great deal to us. It's not only a part of family history, but it signifies the coming home of one of my family from long ago. With this Bible, we now know that he is home." I felt amazed after all of this time someone would care to trace the ownership of something from a battlefield so far away in distance and time. To see and hold the Bible, knowing the history behind it and the tragedy of the First World War, was very emotional. Herbert Hodgson, who died at age 81 in 1974, wrote a personal account of finding the Bible in a muddy shell hole in April of 1918. He wrote in his memoirs, "I went over the top. As with my first experience, I fell after the first few yards, this time stumbling into a shell hole. I spread my arms and my hand grasped something in the mud, and it was a book. I shoved it in my pocket, got up, and carried on. I don't remember much else except hearing a loud bang. A shell had landed nearby, and the blast had knocked me out. When I came to, I remembered the book. It was the Bible. How long it had lain there, I don't know, but it was encrusted with mud. I was sent back to a field hospital, and there I told an officer about my find and asked what I should do with it. He told me it was pointless trying to find its rightful owner. He said, I'd keep it if I were you. It might bring you luck." Herbert's son, Bernard, 83, from Crawley, West Sussex, said, "I remember my father showing me the Bible when we were growing up. My brother recalls him holding it in his hand and saying, 'I wonder which poor bugger this belonged to.' Dad came home from the war safely, and he would say throughout his life that he was always a lucky one. He recalled how his father kept the Bible locked away in a trunk for safekeeping. It was passed on to his 3 sons upon his death." I just love this story. If nothing else, it really reminds us that never say never. Something could come back to us, something that we don't even know exists could find its way back home again. And again, I encourage you to go to the show notes page for this episode, where I have a link for you that will take you to the original article at the Daily Mail. And there you can see photos of the Lucky Bible and Private Cook, who lost his life on the battlefield, and Private Herbert Hodgson, who credited the Bible with saving his life. This article also brings to mind the most recent Genealogy Gems Premium podcast episode that I published last week. In it, I kind of take you on an audio tour of some of the booths in the exhibit hall at the Who Do You Think You Are live conference of 2011. And one of those featured is the Western Front Association, which is just an absolute treasure trove of resources and information on World War I. I really enjoyed having them on the show. So that's in premium episode number 67. It's available now during May of 2011. So you might want to check that out to learn more about ancestors who may have served during the Great War, and just about the home front, and of course all of our ancestors who lived through it.
From my old hometown, one with some jokes from my old pal Jim Brown. Bring me a letter from that girl of mine, saying that she's longing for me all the time. Bring me a letter from my proud old dad, who knows that we are winning, and I bet he's glad. But more than any other, a line from my old mother. Bring me a letter from my hometown.
Well, here in the mailbox, I've got several emails that came in recently about the email that I read back in episode number 108. It was from Ken in Washington, D.C., and he was talking about kind of some of his frustrations with Ancestry's online trees. The first one I've got here is from Helen, who writes, I just listened to this podcast and was excited when the problem dealing with misinformation in Ancestry family trees was mentioned. I have looked at family trees on Ancestry, which list sources that are other people's trees as not primary sources at all. The circulation of misinformation is polluting the genealogy world. I decided to send a message which would be seen by other Ancestry subscribers when I found misinformation. When I had documentation of the primary source, which might correct the mistake, I provided the information concerning the primary source so that others could use that primary source instead of the information in the family tree. I intend to do this for any information which I think is not correct. I received one message thanking me for this. If every person shared their primary sources, we could possibly begin to correct the published mistakes. And Lois writes in, I just listened to your latest podcast and had to comment on the part where you talked about the accuracy and reliability of family tree information on Ancestry.com. I have had people take me to task on this issue, and I want to voice my opinion on this. I don't understand why anyone would consider information in an online family tree service that is open to everyone as a potentially accurate source. Especially with the hints that Ancestry.com provides, I feel I would be remiss if I didn't link to all possible leads to my family tree. Many times information posted in related trees has led me to hints that either prove or disprove theories in my tree. Of course, I wouldn't add information from someone else's tree if that information is illogical, such as a child born to child parents, but I will add information that seems reasonable but hasn't been proven. If I find a source that disproves someone's information, I will modify it or remove it on Ancestry, but until that happens, the data stays. One of the problems with Ancestry is that it often doesn't recognize that a related person already exists in your tree, and if you haven't been working directly with the individual, you can wind up with duplicates in your tree. Since there's no way to merge people in Ancestry, cleaning this up is a challenge in itself that can lead to more inaccuracies. The official family tree with all my documented sources is stored in Roots Magic, not in an online service. That is the one I will pass down to future generations. The data in my online tree is a working copy that provides opportunities for new leads, not the definitive work. And AC wrote in on the subject. He says, I was just listening to episode number 108, where Ken from Washington, D.C. is talking about his beef with Ancestry. He talked about Ancestry.com trees and how many of them have incorrect information. The example he gave was that of a child being born before their parents. I too have found many trees in Ancestry.com to have major errors such as these. However, I wanted to write in and give my input on an opinion on the matter. Though I find it frustrating to find incorrect information in member trees on Ancestry, I do not believe it is Ancestry's responsibility to be the genealogy police. There are over 20 million family trees on Ancestry.com, and there's no possible way that they can go through every tree and find errors such as a child being born before their parents. When a user adds information into the family tree on Ancestry.com and the date is not a logical one, the user receives a warning asking if they are sure that they want to enter that information. The user has the choice to continue with the illogical information if they want, but Ancestry does its part trying to help. Like I said earlier, there are over 20 million family trees on Ancestry.com, and there's no possible way that they can monitor every individual person, date, place, or fact. People already complain enough that Ancestry.com is priced too high, but imagine the cost it would take for them to hire genealogy police to fix people's mistakes. It is the responsibility of the genealogist to make sure they enter correct information. That is why it's so important to teach new and experienced genealogists to complete an exhaustive search as defined in the Genealogical Proof Standard. And I think AC makes a very good point there. Gosh, you certainly wouldn't want them investing all kinds of money trying to monitor internally all of that information. But, as I was reading this email from AC, it got me to thinking, one possibility, and I'm just throwing it out there, but what if the Ancestry tree required that you attach a source, something that proves where you got the information? And, maybe it's a document from Ancestry, maybe it's an interview that you did. But if it actually had a source field that popped up and said, in order to add data, we need to have you add a source. Because if you think about it, Ancestry would never add a collection to their website, at least I don't think they would, that didn't have a reference to, where they got that collection from. So I don't know, the more you think about that, it may not be their job to police the sources, but it could be a possibility to require a source, basically saying, look, you need to be able to, in some way, explain where you got this from. But of course, that brings up a whole nother, mess of questions and debate that goes on in general about ancestry and sources, because source citation is not a built-in thing. It's not something that they require, and it's not even something that they necessarily even facilitate in terms of using the records that you do find on the website. So, it's interesting. It's a matter of kind of what their focus is and what our focus is. But I think he makes a great point that certainly we don't want to look at that as being something that they're going to monitor. And as Lois says, certainly you're not going to look at this as, a primary proven information. These are just clues. And that's what we talked about, and I mentioned in the last episode as well. And finally, on this topic, a listener who calls himself Genealogical Mason chimed in. He says, I also want to comment on the email you got regarding Ancestry. My thought has been, if you're going to make the tree public and upload information in media files, you are sharing it with the public. The genealogy community has always been about sharing anyway, although it's starting to get really commercialized as of late. It would be nice if people said thank you, or Ancestry would add something automatically when you added the picture to your family tree. But it isn't like anyone is making money off of them, and if they're using the picture, wouldn't that make them family anyway? And I completely agree with you on the Ancestry family trees. Though those kinds of messed up family trees isn't limited to Ancestry, but the combination of their clicking leaves, ad campaigns, and all those new people who don't understand. But I have to give them credit, though. Those family trees have pointed me in several correct directions, found 3 second cousins, and it gave me enough exposure initially to get into this hobby. Great point, Genealogical Mason. Absolutely. There are positive aspects to it, and I agree with that, wow, for the found distant cousins, it's worth a couple of things that might need some cleaning up. And, you echo my feelings exactly in that we have to stay in mind anytime we post something online, we are making it public. That's for sure. And we have to know that unless we know that particular person and see the exact source citations, we have to take it with a grain of salt and use it more like a clue than as a source. So, hey, it looks like we're all kind of in general on the same page, and real interesting. Thank you so much for all of you who joined in on that conversation. Now, switching gears, I mentioned in the last episode that I was pretty surprised to see that the women in Steve Buscemi's family tree on his episode of Who Do You Think You Are, they were listed with their married names and not their maiden names. And a couple of you wrote in about that. Pam writes, listening to episode number 108, I had to write. I too noticed the married names for women on the pedigree chart and thought that was odd for a genealogy show. I'm not sure how often they've shown the married names, but I have noticed it for many of the episodes this season. Thanks for great podcasts. And Roxanne in Vancouver, BC, Canada writes, I was just listening to the episode number 108, and when it got to the part about maiden names used in the show, Who Do You Think You Are with Steve Buscemi, I had to write to tell you my experience. A number of years back, I requested from the Red River Valley Genealogical Society in North Dakota a pioneer certificate, as my family had resided in the area prior to November 2nd of 1889. When the certificate arrived in the mail, I was excited and proud, but at the same time, I was concerned as to how my husband would react as I requested the certificate to be put in my maiden name. Would he be upset or resent that I was not acknowledging his surname, my married name? I opened the envelope with my husband by my side, and I assumed he would not be impressed when he saw the name on the certificate. But to my pleasant surprise, without my explaining, he said, "That is who you are. It should be in your maiden name." I was so thrilled, relieved, and happy to hear him say that, as he is not interested in genealogy, yet he understood the importance to me. Thank you, Lisa, for all of these wonderful podcasts. They are the highlight to my week, and I always look forward to them. Well, thank you, Roxanne. That's really neat. And what a neat story. Thank you for sharing. And finally, I always love to hear when someone out there discovers the podcast. And Karen in Vermont did that recently, and she wrote in. She says, a few weeks ago, I was delighted to find your 2 podcasts. family history and genealogy gems. I am a self-taught family historian who's been working on the genealogy of my husband and myself for the past several years. I wish I had found your podcasts when they first came out. They would have undoubtedly made my job easier. Although I don't consider myself a beginner, I started listening to all of the family history podcasts in order just to see what I missed. As with many people, I've had many successes, but also my share of setbacks along the way. I'm embarrassed to say that until I listened to Family History episode number 4, I did not know that I could request a copy of an ancestor's original Social Security application. I have linked into the Social Security Death Index for many ancestors, but I didn't realize I could get a copy of the application itself. My husband's great-grandmother had been a real mystery to us, primarily due to missing or destroyed vital records. But I knew that she was listed in the SSDI, so I immediately requested a copy of her application. A couple of weeks later, it arrived, and I was able to confirm her birth date and place, and to identify both of her parents. This information also allowed me to confirm an unexpected piece of information, a previous marriage that was unknown in the family until now. I had previously found a marriage record of a young woman with the same name as her, but her age was different, and because I didn't know her parents, or that she'd ever been married before, I wasn't able to confirm that this person was her. So that one document helped me in many ways, and it's all because I listened to your podcast. Thank you so much for your podcast, and I can't wait to work my way through them all to see what other discoveries I can make. Well, Karen, that is a really cool story. I am so pleased that you're listening to the show and that it's paying off, giving you some genealogy gems. Thank you so much for writing.
Profile America, Sunday, May 8th. Today is Mother's Day, one of the most revered national observances. The idea started in 1908 with Anna Jarvis of West Virginia to honor her recently departed mother, who had voiced the hope that sometime there would be a day to commemorate all mothers. By 1911, every state observed Mother's Day, and in 1914, Congress made it a national event. There are more than 85 million mothers across the U.S. Each year, just over 4 million women have babies. Of these, some 410,000 are teenagers 15 to 19, while at the other end of the age scale, more than 7,900 are aged 45 to 54. The average age of women giving birth for the first time is just over 25. Profile America is beginning its 15th year as a public service of the U.S. Census Bureau.
One of the reasons I personally do family history is because I really want to honor my family. With Mother's Day just around the corner, there's a very important person in our family that we all want to honor, and that's Mom. But what does Mom really want? What would just wow her and make her speechless this year? What about jewelry? When I saw what ice.com has at their website, the beautiful jewelry and gems, I was just thrilled that they wanted to sponsor this episode. Because at ice.com, you can get the real thing online. Fine jewelry, affordable prices, and they're offering free shipping for Mother's Day as well. Whether your mom likes classic diamond earrings or she likes to make a statement with bold gems, it's all within your budget. That's the good news. And that's because ICE is not paying for mall locations. They are online only. And you know, I do the bulk of my shopping online, and it's so convenient, and the variety is fantastic. By not being located in a mall, ice.com can pass their savings on to us. So this is your chance to really honor Mom with a classic bracelet or my favorite thing, which is a glamorous ring. I know sometimes it's very intimidating to buy jewelry for somebody and you just worry about getting the perfect thing, but no problem because they have their special Mother's Day gift guide. And many of the items on their website have videos that you can view. So you really can see the item moving in the light. I love it. What a wonderful way to shop. And I'm very excited to let you know that they have a very special offer on their gems for my Genealogy Gems listeners. It's exclusive to you. You can get 25% off their entire site. And in addition to the 25%, you're going to get free shipping. It is the best way to shop. You need to go to their special webpage just for Genealogy Gems listeners. It's ice.com/gems for this exclusive offer. Just go take a peek, see what they have. Certain restrictions do apply, but just head on over to ice.com/gems, check out the Mother's Day gift guide, and enjoy honoring your mom this Mother's Day. Are you looking to take the next step in your family history research and start recording your family tree in your own genealogy database? Or are you looking to make a switch to a more user-friendly genealogy software program? When my listeners and students ask me which program I prefer, I always recommend RootsMagic. It's the program I decided to make the switch to a couple of years ago, and I am so glad I did. You just won't find a more powerful genealogy software program, and building your family tree is easier than ever with the new RootsMagic 4. With RootsMagic, you can add unlimited facts, find anyone in your database with lightning speed with RootsMagic Explorer, quickly and easily create perfectly formatted sources with the RootsMagic Source Wizard. It makes it so easy. You can create customized reports, and best of all, you can now take RootsMagic wherever your research takes you with RootsMagic to Go, which lets you run RootsMagic directly off your flash drive. And RootsMagic makes it a snap to share your family history. You know how important I think that is. It'll help you publish a book, create stunning wall charts, shareable CDs, even create websites automatically from your data. Really, what are you waiting for? Download your risk-free trial of RootsMagic 4 and see why professionals and beginners alike choose RootsMagic at rootsmagic.com. In the April episode of the Family Tree Magazine podcast, which I also produce, I had the rare opportunity to interview Mike Litterst of the National Park Service about the Civil War Soldiers and Sailors System website, which you can find at itd.nps.gov/CWSS, in honor of the 150th anniversary of the start of the Civil War. Well, after we wrapped up that interview, Mike agreed to stay on the line just a little bit longer to talk with us about another important NPS website. Mike happens to be the National Communications Coordinator for the National Park Service's 150th anniversary commemoration, which means that he is also over the National Park Service sesquicentennial commemoration website called the Civil War 150 Years. And he's going to share this gem with us today. Here's my conversation with Mike Litterst. Mike, thanks so much for taking a few more minutes out with us here, because the 150th anniversary of the Civil War is quite a milestone. Tell us, what's your role in kind of promoting this out to the general population?
Well, the National Park Service has well over 100 sites that are related directly to the Civil War or indirectly as civil rights sites or other important events that sprung out of the Civil War. So over the next several years, between now and 2015, we'll be coordinating, obviously, a large effort to commemorate and highlight a number of these events and a number of these parks. And my role is to, best we can, get the information out there for the public about what's going on and what they can look forward to.
You're right. Now, we have, you mentioned the Civil War 150 Years website. It's at nps.gov/Civil War 150. This looks like a really, well, first of all, it's just a beautiful site. Tell us, what kinds of things can the family historian kind of dig into there?
We've launched that site just at the end of February, so we'll still tweak it, and there'll be some changes and additions, obviously, as we go along. But what it does is just sort of a gateway into the anniversary years. one of the important things that the Park Service is trying to do during this commemoration is to point out how relevant the Civil War still is to America today. Rather than just commemorating events that occurred 50 years ago, what we try to do on the website is show how the events that were debated and fought over in the 1860s still reverberate today, and you find that at the top of the website with the Then and Now feature. And it takes important events 150 years ago and ties them into things that are going on today. So folks can hopefully look at those resources. They can click on the links to get more information, to read analysis or full speeches, and again see how these events still affect us today. One of the sort of fun features of the site is our Civil War reporter, and this is a fictional reporter from the Civil War era, but he is essentially tweeting in real time the events from the 1860s. So as we are now here getting ready to go into the second week of April, our Civil War reporter is on the way to Charleston to find out what's happening at Fort Sumter, and will be there to report in real time via Twitter and Facebook what happens on April 12th, 1861. Chance for us to hopefully reach out to some new audiences and some younger generations that might not normally be as interested in the Civil War, but we're find this an interesting medium for them to follow along.
Oh, it's really cool. And I'm looking at it here. It's at twitter.com, and it's at Civil War Reporter, and it's REPORTR. It says, I'm Beglin O'Brien, a fictional Civil War newspaper reporter. The National Park Service sponsors my Twitter feed so you can experience events as they happen. This is really great. It really looks like you're doing some innovative things and you're really staying up to speed. Is that a challenge when you're dealing in historic issues and then you're also having to stay into the modern stuff and the social media? It's kind of a unique merge.
We're finding a little bit of challenge in reporting the Civil War 140 characters at a time.
Yeah.
For example, I have a 17-year-old son who most days isn't likely to get that interested in the Civil War, but he follows this, and, periodically we'll read one of the messages or the tweets and ask me for a little bit more information about what's going on, and we can only hope that snapshot is something that is being repeated across the country as we try and get a new generation interested in these events, and seeing how, even though it was so long ago, it's still relevant to them today.
Exactly. As I'm looking at the homepage of the website, you can click on one of the dates here and you see something from 1861, and then you see the conversation in 2011. Where does all this content come from? Who's behind the scenes kind of pulling all this together?
We've been very fortunate. We've got some folks that were on loan to us from another one of the local parks in the Washington, D.C. area, and we called them our SWAT team, and they the better part of the last couple of months immersed in the library, coming up with the tweets and coming up with the then and now material. So we've got tweets all the way at least to the end of 1861 for right now, but that means we've still got 4 years to go after that. So it is a somewhat daunting project, to be sure.
You bet. Now, I'm really interested because as I was learning more about your background, I know that you have been at a variety of the Civil War sites in the Mid-Atlantic region, the battlefields of Gettysburg and Richmond and Fredericksburg and Manassas. I'm real interested on a personal level. What has your experience been? How do you feel about this 150th anniversary and what it means to the country?
I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to sort of take a look back and see where we've come, and take a look back sort of warts and all. Obviously, the nation was completely different and in many ways much better by the end of the Civil War. But Abraham Lincoln talks about the more perfect union, and we're certainly far from being a perfect union at this point. But a lot of the things that came out of the Civil War, equality for all, was something we didn't quite achieve. And it was interesting that for the Civil War centennial, 50 years ago, those commemorations were being held against the backdrop of the modern civil rights movement, which itself came out of the Civil War. So one of the things that we think is very important for us to be able to do for the 150th anniversary is to be inclusive. for us to be able to tell the story, not just of what happened on the battlefield, but look beyond the battles and the tactics that folks are used to hearing. But take a look at the home front as well as the battlefront. Who were the people that were affected by the war? How did they live? Taking a look at the institution of slavery and the transition from slavery to freedom. So I think that's one of the most important things for us to be able to do during this time period, is to have an opportunity to tell much more of the complete story.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so much to it. And I know in talking to family historians, it's amazing how more information comes out of people's attics and the boxes that haven't been opened for years. And all of a sudden they find a journal or a photograph. And it's amazing. The Civil War's history is in each one of our own homes and attics, isn't it?
It really is. And I've always sort of likened the genealogy to sort of a treasure hunt, and there are no dead ends.
Right.
There's always someplace else to look, and some other source of records, and like you say, a lot of times those records just wind up being in our own attic. The National Park Service has a brand new handbook coming out next week for the anniversary of Fort Sumter, and included in that are scores of previously unpublished photographs and images of the war that a family had collected over the years and just recently donated to the Library of Congress. So there is really no such thing as having seen it all or read it all or being aware of everything from the Civil War era.
Well, and that goes back to that we were talking about before, that merging of the historic times and all the modern social media and things that are going on today. I know we see all the photographs on Flickr and things on Facebook. It's just amazing how much more readily we can share with each other as well. And it's kind of exciting to see that the National Park Service is embracing that as well.
Yeah, it really is sort of the golden age of historic research. I started out my first year in the Park Service was actually the 125th anniversary, and to do research at that time meant literally a trip to the National Archives. And if you didn't live in Washington and the Washington D.C. area, you were sort of stuck. Now you can get on, just by jumping on the web and going to the Civil War Soldiers and Sailors System or footnote.com or all those places where all those records are readily available with just a click of a mouse. It's really a wonderful time to be involved in Civil War research and genealogy.
Well, now finally, as we look to the future, you have been focused on preparing for the 150th anniversary. What's on your agenda? What are some of the milestones coming up that you have your eye on?
Well, certainly the big one is April 12th. That will be the anniversary of the bombardment of Fort Sumter, the actual start of the war proper, the start of the fighting, and there will be a weeks-long worth of commemorations at Fort Sumter National Monument in Charleston. And then the next big event for us is in Virginia in July for the First Battle of Manassas, the first major battle of the war, and that will be at the Manassas National Battlefield Park, July 21st and 24th. So we're getting ready for those events and ramping up the new websites and those sorts of things. So it's going to be a busy 4 years.
Oh, I bet. I'm curious. So many people obviously can't get there in person. Do you do any filming? Do you have a YouTube channel? Is there any way for people to kind of see what some of those celebrations are?
That's certainly one of the things that we're looking at as we continue to expand the website that we've got. Use of Flickr and YouTube and some of those other ways that we can use social media and the internet to take the messages and the events to people that can't get to them.
Right. Well, I really appreciate that you have taken a few minutes here to talk to us about this really terrific website. There is lots to dig into here, and you can see what some of the upcoming events are. Again, it's at nps.gov/Civil War 150. Mike, thanks again so much for being here on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks so much for joining me for Genealogy Gems podcast episode number 109. Again, be sure that you get signed up for that free Roots Magic webinar in May of 2011, where I will be presenting an introduction to Google Earth for genealogy. And to keep up on all the things that are going on around here at Genealogy Gems, all you need to do is join our free mailing list. Head over to genealogygems.com and just click the podcast newsletter button, and you'll not only get our newsletter, which is, of course, packed with gems. I always try to make sure there's a couple of great gems in there for you. And of course, news about what's coming up on the shows and where we'll be presenting and free webinars, all that good stuff. But also you will receive a free ebook when you register. It's called 5 Fabulous Google Search Strategies for the Family Historian. So that comes with your welcome email, and you can download that and put it to use. And of course, I love hearing from you. So please drop me a line. You can email me at genealogygemspodcast@gmail.com. May share your email here on the show, or you can leave me a voicemail, which is always terrific, 925-272-4021. Well, thank you so much for listening, friend. I'll talk to you soon.